lexicon that tells us that there's no distinction between Latria and Dulia?
What an amazing question. Give me one Greek lexicon that says what you're affirming. You're the one making the claim here that Latria and Dulia are to be distinguished in these ways. You show me...
There was a distinction. You're the one that said that. You're the one that refuted my video by saying that there was no biblical distinction between Latria and Dulia.
That's right. And the first question...
and the one Greek lexicon that tells us that.
And the first question I asked you when you called in was to substantiate the distinction, and you said you'd get to it later. Now you want to assume it. I say to you that Bauer, Donker, and Gingrich does not tell us that those particular two terms are not used in the Old Testament context, translating the one Hebrew term, avad. So it's irrelevant. They're not concerned about such things. Both will define the semantic range of those particular terms, and they will recognize that latruo is normally used within the cultic practice of the temple. Diluo can be used in both that and a secular usage, but they will also recognize that diluo is used of worship just like latruo is. So, again, we come back to the basic fundamental question that has yet to be answered, and that is, you, in your videos...
Actually, you answered it for me already, but go ahead.
Please, I asked the question to you first. You, in your videos, in a very condescending tone, said, well, this scholarship is ridiculous. And for you, disagreeing with you means your scholarship is bad. But that's you've done from the first time I saw one of your first videos. But
and I told you why I said that, though. I wasn't referring to you yourself. I told you why I thought that it was ridiculous.
Actually, I just played you saying that something about Ignatius, remember? And then when we play with what you say about Ignatius, all you're doing is engaging in mockery and calling that scholarship. That's not scholarship. But the point here is very simple. Okay, the point very simply is this. You've been asked a question. Turretin Fan's article is based upon the understanding that what you have going on when you bow before Mary, when you worship Mary, when you do all these things, that's worship. We do not believe that there is a biblical distinction. So document that, demonstrate that.
You already agree. You admitted that the words are not equal. Are you saying that you said at first that there was no biblical distinction, and all of a sudden I ask you admit that Julia is not always used in the sense of worship?
Okay. Actually, right now, I can just stop and sit back and allow the listeners. I can allow the listeners to judge this for themselves because it's just so obvious that William cannot hear what is being said to him.
All right. Let me backtrack. You said that there is no biblical distinction between latria and dulia, and I believe that the fact of the matter is that there are two distinct words used differently at times. I agreed with you that dulia is and should always be rendered to God, but it's also shown as being rendered elsewhere in references that are not directed towards God. Latria is never shown as proper towards anyone other than God. That is clear. That was my point. And I said dulia was different. Of course, it should be rendered to God in service, and we're to obey and serve God. That is my whole point.
Are we to obey and serve Mary?
In what sense do you mean? In the sense of God?
So see, now you're demonstrating that our usage has been correct all along, specifically in the religious context.
In the way you just said it, it really doesn't make sense. Are we to obey and serve Mary? We don't communicate with Mary. It's not.
You don't communicate with Mary?
Are you going to allow me to finish my sentence, or are you going to speak over me?
This is called talking back and forth. When you throw something out and says we do not communicate with Mary.
My sentence wasn't done.
Okay, William, when you throw out, I've got you on hold right now, I'll put you back on when you can behave. Okay, this is real simple. We've had you on for quite some time now. You just threw out to the audience the statement, we don't communicate with Mary. Now, I can't tell you how many hundreds of times I have listened to Roman Catholics talking about their communication with Mary. That's what their prayers are, their ability to communicate to her, etc., etc. Okay? So if we could do this as a conversation, this would help a lot. But you want to throw stuff out and then run from it, and then I have to try to go back and pick up all these threads, and it doesn't work. So follow the rules here, and you'll be able to get lots more time. But if you throw something out and I challenge it, don't just immediately start complaining. When you've got a webcast that people listen to, fine, I'll follow your rules. But right now, you're on mine. All right? That's the way it goes. Now, if you'd like to pick up with where you were, please do so.
Am I on?
You are.
Okay, James, I wasn't trying to be rude in any sense at all. I haven't yelled. I haven't laughed at your comments or been rude in any way. I don't think. If I get out of line before you mute me, can you at least tell me to calm down or something? I was trying to finish my sentence. I really wasn't done before you stopped me and started ridiculing.
If you would stop arguing about whether you're being treated fairly and just make your case, you'd be doing a lot better.
You're right, unless I get muted again. My point was that we don't communicate with Mary, as I was trying to say, in the sense of we sit down and we speak to Mary. That is why I said it seems a little bit odd to say, do we obey Mary? That is the only thing that I was trying to say. That's all that I was trying to say. And I actually had a question that I wanted to ask you. Do you think I can ask you a question?
I guess that the answer to my first question is because latruo and diluo are different words, then they cannot be derived from avad, and that's how
I never said they weren't derived from avad. I never said that.
Okay, so if they are, and that is the Hebrew term,
was translated as worship. I never denied that. I said that there are some locations where it isn't though. It
okay,
isn't always.
And can you show me a single place in a religious context where it doesn't mean worship?
Well, I could show you another place, but
where?
You're simply going to say that it doesn't matter. That
where?
Let me go ahead and look it up. You're not. It's not going to hold up for you. You're going to say, "Oh, well, that's not a religious context."
Why don't we let our listeners decide whether it works that way or not?
Okay, I believe. Let me see. I'm trying to open up my Greek Bible here. Give me one moment. Okay. I believe it's Acts 7:7. I'm not sure. Okay. So you would disagree on the interpretation in Acts 7:7. You would say that is not in a religious context, right?
Acts 7:7. But I will judge the nation that they serve, said God, and after that they shall come out and worship me in this place. Is that what you're looking at?
I'm looking at the Greek terms dulia and latria, which are used here, of course, differently in the Greek.
Uh-huh.
Are you saying that this reference is to worship?
Well, first of all, it's a quotation from the Old Testament.
Okay.
And it's talking about a nation that they serve. And in fact, if you would look back a little bit, it's talking about Egypt. And so it's talking about their enslavement at that point. Going back to verse 5, yet he gave him no inheritance in it, not even a foot's length, but promised to give to him as a possession and his offspring after him, though he had no child. And God spoke to this effect, that his offspring would be sojourners in the land belonging to others, who would enslave them and afflict them 400 years. And the term for enslave there is from doulos, diluo, to serve. Right. And so it's speaking there, obviously, of the nation which they were enslaved, and after that they shall come out and worship me. So, no, this is not an indication, unless you're going to say that the Israelites were worshiping the Egyptians. No, this is not a religious context at all. The context provided by Acts itself is that they were enslaved to the Egyptians.
So your contention is that each and every single time dulia is not rendered to God, that it's pretty much not in a religious context?
My assertion is that in a religious context, there is no distinction in the Bible between saying, well, if someone was caught in a tent, bowing down before a statue with a light, with the candles burning, and they were brought before Moses, if they had said, oh, Moses, you don't understand, I wasn't giving latria, I was giving dulia, that excuse would not have held up, because it is being read into the text from an external source.
So that's an irrelevant argument, James, because they worship those idols. It's very, very different. We don't worship Mary in any sense whatsoever.
Well, you didn't just catch. You didn't just see. You didn't even hear what I just said to you, and that's been my problem with you all along,
yes,
William. Is that no matter what someone says to you, you just repeat what you just said as if that's somehow a refutation.
James, I heard you clearly. I also heard you in your debate against Patrick Madrid, and I heard the comment he used dealing with bowing to statues. The thing is, it's very different. It's completely different.
Why? Why? Tell me why. Because as a non-Roman Catholic,
worship given towards Mary.
You're reasoning in circles. You're reasoning in circles. Everybody listening to this, William, hears you right now reasoning in circles. And just
I haven't heard you reason at all, so everybody hears you as well. Not being able to reason
I think that speaks for itself.
Okay.
Would the man brought before Moses, would it have been a valid distinction for him to have said, I'm not giving this statue latria, I'm only giving it dulia?
It wouldn't have been valid because he was giving latria to the statue. That is the reason why it wouldn't have been valid.
And I simply say to you, you have not established that. Establish that. You can't. You just
so you're telling
assume
me
it.
right now they didn't worship the statues. Then you're creating a false argument. You're telling me right now they didn't worship statues.
I am telling you that when they bow down before the statues,
they were worshiping the
just like when you bow down before Mary, you're engaging in idolatry.
No,
exactly.
Sorry,
exactly.
James. Maybe you don't understand the double space, but you're wrong. You're wrong, James. We don't worship Mary, and I'm still waiting for you to name one
let's see. Now
there is no distinction.
Now here is where we see your form of apologetics, and that is you take the modern Roman Catholic definition, you read it back into whatever you find in the past, and if anyone disagrees, they're just wrong. Well, simply saying you're wrong is not an argument.
Can I ask you one question, James? Can I ask you one question? I mean, dealing with the past, since you're talking about the past right now.
Please, go ahead.
Are you aware of any, because I mean, I've heard you mention it before, I'm just going to ask you, are you aware of any church father that was proficient in Greek or Latin or both that wrote devotionals to Mary and that claimed that it was a form of worship?
Wrote devotionals to Mary and claimed it was a form of worship.
Right.
Excuse me, but why on earth do you people keep asking us to come up with people who said we are worshiping? That has never been our point. Our point is, on the basis of the biblical definition of worship, that is what is going on.
My point is that their church fathers had great amount of devotional towards Mary and never...
There were some who did. There were some who did not.
There were the ones that did not mention it. You're right, they did not. And some that simply had nothing to say at all. I would agree. But I'm speaking about the church fathers that particularly were proficient in Greek and Latin, or at least in one of them that wrote towards Mary, and none of them ever claimed that it was a form of worship. This is the ancient church, and here we have you claiming that this is worship.
Again,
a couple of thousand years later.
Yeah, and again, the definition of worship pre-existed every church father because it was written in what is called Scripture.
You're right, James, but you've used these same fathers many times over and over to trumpet your other Protestant beliefs, and now I'm asking you...
I use the early church fathers to demonstrate inconsistencies in Roman Catholic usage. I do not make them an authority.
I would agree. You never made them an authority, but I particularly like the way you've used Athanasius many times over. Yet Athanasius even calls Mary the Mother of God. And
excuse me, have you read my book on Mary?
I did not even know you had a book on Mary.
Yeah, well, you'll notice that Protestant scholarship recognizes that Theotokos was a term that initially was used as a title of Christ. It had to do with the deity of Christ, that he truly was God. So why in the world would you even begin to raise the issue that Athanasius utilized the term in an Orthodox sense?
I didn't need to have to read your book to know that. I already knew that fact. The fact of the matter is I'm asking you...
Then why even throw it out, William?
Because I'm pointing out that the early church had honor and respect for Mary, and I don't understand why worshiping them.
Okay, here we go. Good illustration. Good illustration here. To use the term Theotokos does not mean for Athanasius what it means for you today. You keep reading those things back into the early fathers as if they did. Okay, did Athanasius believe in the bodily assumption of Mary? Yes or no?
We don't have documented evidence that he did. It doesn't really matter whether we do or not. There's a lot of doctrines that we don't have documented evidence the fathers didn't believe in. It doesn't really matter.
Okay, can you name a single person at the Council of Nicaea that believed what you believe about Mary? A single bishop.
At what council of Nicaea? First Nicaea or second Nicaea?
First.
Sure, I'll name out the name.